I get home, and now it's time to start thinking about college. And not so simple, not so simple. This is in 1947, 48. There was still backing you up a year and a half to start school. They didn't have enough dorms, they didn't have enough classrooms, they didn't have enough faculty, they didn't have enough money, none of the schools. So I wanted to go through the motions, and the motions in those days, no SATs or anything like that. The typical motions, I went to Harvard, and I had to take a test, show my high school transcript, which wasn't super, but it didn't matter much. I take a test because for GI they give you an extra 50 points then on the rating scale. And so I went to Harvard, took a test, passed the test, had an interview, and they said, well, Mr. Tower, Mr. Tower was 18 years old, there's one thing I have to tell you. If we accept you, you won't be able to start for a year and a half. They showed me the calendar. He says, we expect to have room for you at that time. Now that didn't please me at all, because I did the same thing at Boston University, got the same answer. So here I am, well, out of school. I got the GI Bill, and I went to prep school for about 3 months just to brush up on my math and English and stuff. And it was the local one in Quincy, in Braintree, Mass. And I'm walking down the street in my hometown, and I hear my name called out. Stu Tower, is that you? I turn around, it's a guy who graduated 2 years before me. He says, what are you doing? And I told him my dilemma. I can't get into school and I want to start college. He says, well, I had the same thing. And he says, I'm going to a school that I have to introduce you to. Guess what? He said, would you meet me on Beacon Street, 130 Beacon Street on Monday morning at 9 o'clock? Well, what's there? He says, Emerson College. I says, what's that? He says, you'll find out all about it. So I met him there that Monday, and he introduced me to the registrar, to one of the department heads, to a couple of the teachers, and the faculty members, and some of the students. And I went through the same thing. I was interviewed. I had to take an entrance test. That's what they gave you in those days, an entry test. And I must have knocked the hell out of it. And the registrar said to me, he said, when would you like to start? She says, I can make my decision in 2 or 3 days, she said. Would you be ready to start? I says, yeah, I'll start intersession. This intersession started in June. Would you be willing to start then? I says, yes. So she called me 3 days later. I forgot her name, Eleanor or something. And she said, we're ready to have you start Emerson College.
Wow.
And I started in June 1948.
Were you the first person in your family to go to college?
What?
Were you the first person in your family to go to college?
No. I had a cousin who went to Northeastern, and then
Okay.
he joined the Navy, and he was an officer in the Navy. And I guess I was the second to go to college. Well, no, my cousin who didn't go into the Army at all, fat boy. He went to college. He started about a year after me anyway.
Where did he go?
I went to Northeastern also.
Oh.
But anyway, I said, geez, this is great. And I walked into my first class that summer, and a man sitting behind the desk, that big, giant of a man with a voice to match. The name of the class, Principles of Oral Expression, which I think in some form or another is still given today.
Yeah.
And I was the first person to walk into the class. He had a small class, intercession time, you know. And he said, what is your name, young man? I said, I'm blown out of the water, you know. I said, Stuart Tower. He said, what is that? Let me hear it. I said, Stuart Tower. So that's a little better. He says, I don't want to hear a Boston accent. You're going to get rid of that as soon as possible. Have a seat. That was my first brush with Emerson College. Professor William Howland Kenny, who was a big name at Emerson at that time. He was the speech guy, the principles of oral, POE, principles of oral expression. So anyway, I loved everything I had about Emerson. I had a girlfriend that summer. Her name was Marilyn Briss.
And that didn't scare you?
I could never get used to that name. I was always concerned about her whipping out a knife. That was true. She was cute as a button. Cute as a button. Just about as cute as Jesse's girl. And she was just lovely. And but it didn't. It was just one of those summer flings, which I had. Anyway, yeah.
Where did you stay? I mean, it's Quincy's far from Emerson.
Home.
That's a long commute.
Oh yes. Yeah, all the GIs stood at home if they could. So
You took the subway?
Oh, about an hour. Yeah,
Yeah.
I took a bus to I forgot the name of the station, and then you pick up the subway there. It was called a T in those days.
Yeah.
And you got off at Park, and then Park you walk across
Sure.
Commons to Emerson. I did that every day. I did
Wow.
that every day for 3.5 years. And a lot of the guys did. You know, you got $75 a month GI Bill. All your books taken care of, all your tuition taken care of. But you needed money to live, you know.
Yeah.
So you didn't want to start paying for the dorms because that's another big expense. And beyond the GI Bill had a limit on dorms. So I commuted, and it was fun. And in September of that year, I started my real first year because that was the intersection. I think I had about 8 hours intersection. It was a good start, you know. Good start. I got all A's. An A in a history class, A in an English class, A in the speech class. Great. And when September came along, the freshman class, I was in the freshman class, but I was going to make it 3 years no matter what, you know. But I didn't know it at that time. Didn't know it. I'll tell you how I got to know it. Like all the other boys in my hometown or ex-GIs and all that, we went to dances practically every weekend. There were dances all over Boston, you know, various synagogues and temples and various B'nai B'riths and all that, you know. So we went to the dances, boy, get all dolled up, you know, and go to a dance. In those days, you went to a dance, you wore a tie. Yeah. You hear that, Jesse? A tie.
Yeah.
And a shirt and a jacket.
I like that.
So at one I went to in, I think it was the end of November, early December. I met an old friend of mine from my hometown who was 4 or 5 years older than me, but I had known him. We played ball together when I was back in Quincy. And he said, I want to introduce you to my fiance. Okay, and this is Ruth, and this is my old friend from Quincy, Stu Tower. Nice. It was his wife he was going to marry, Ruth. And Ruth says to me right off the bat, there were 4 or 5 other guys standing around, but she picked me out. And she said, I've got a cousin I want you to meet. I said, oh, great, you know, I'm ready to meet anybody. And she says, her name is Judy, Judy Brooker, and she's my cousin. You'll like her, she's a lovely girl. So she's writing down her phone number for me, and I put it in my pocket. Thanks a lot. She's a lovely girl, that's Ruthie, she's no longer here. And so about 3 weeks later, in fact, it was Christmas night. And that was a big night for the Jewish kids. Christmas night, we're going out and raise hell, you know. So go to a nightclub or something. So all my gang was deciding to get dates for this Friday, I guess it's a Thursday night or whatever it was, and go to the 5 o'clock club in Boston on Huntington. It was a great club there, you know. And even though we were not 21, you could still get a drink there. It's one of those things. Not that I drank, but I make the phone call about a week before the date of all the guys are getting together. And the only reason I did so because I looked up on my bureau, on the top of my bureau, and there's this little piece of paper I had put up there. I think I'll call her. That's what I did. I called her. And I said, I'd like to invite you to go with me on Thursday night. She said, oh, fine. And she gave me her address, and so, yeah. So I said, okay, I'll be by at 7 o'clock. And I took my dad's car. Nobody had their own cars in those days. I think 2 guys from my whole gang in Quincy had their own cars. Beat up 32, 33 Chevys or whatever it was, you know. But my dad was so nice, he always let me drive his car at night if I was going somewhere on a date or anything else. And so I had his car, and I went to 1589 Beacon Street, and I knocked on the door. It's a big apartment building. And the door opens, and a woman opens the door, and she's got on sort of a dressing robe. And I swear, on the night table, sitting in the vestibule, is a lamp with a red light. I swear, a red light. What am I getting into here? I said, is Judy here? She said, oh yes, you must be the young man from Quincy. I says, yes. Well, she'll be here in a minute. So Judy comes out, and boom, you know, I was almost coup de foudre, they say in France. Love at first sight. And we had a marvelous time that night. And
How was she dressed? What did she look like?
oh, she had a lovely dress on. Her mother was in the dress business.
Oh.
So, and she worked in the dress shop. So she had a she had a really nice dresser and all that. And she was so adorable and cute and blah, blah, blah. And I'm boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom. And she turned out to be a wonderful conversationalist, nice, quiet person, lovely person. And all my friends liked her. Keep away, you know. They all liked her too. And we had a nice evening with all my gang, you know. And I even got up and sang a couple of songs, you know. I sang a couple of Eddie Arnold songs. Can't remember which ones. They invite you up to the mic, and that was called open mic now. But at the night it was just getting up there and singing, you know.
Yeah.
And it was sort of a country western place. I loved it. And I also sang at Mohawk Ranch in Boston on Huntington Avenue when I was at Emerson. But anyway, I said to Judy at the end of that evening, I'll call you next week and we'll go out and get some Chinese food. She said, oh, fine, what night? I gave her the night, Friday, Saturday, whatever it was. She'd go, good. And I was smitten, man. I was smitten. And with the young kitten. And anyway, so that was all she wrote. That was it. It was nothing more ever said about, are we going steady? Are we dating? Are you my boyfriend? Are you my girlfriend? Like you were saying before. Nothing was said. Nothing. It was all understood. And that's the way I wanted it. And evidently that's the way Judy wanted it. And that was it. We fell.
So you just went on a few more dates?
We fell madly in love anyway, so we continued to be in each other's company, going out, you know. And that's what you did in those days. You didn't go to sleep with anybody. That was.
Did you call?
No.
Did you talk on the phone during the week?
All the time, yeah, all the time. And and I wrote her some notes and all that. I used to love to do that, you know. And I was president of my class, freshman class. They had to have a president for the freshman class, and nobody knew each other. But I was hanging around with a lot of guys. Hey, I think we'll make you president. So I became president of the freshman class. And it was a freshman dance shortly after I met Judy. And of course I invited her. And I invited her to a big dance they had that spring. But we were together constantly. And we had just a marvelous time. And I met her family, and she met my whole family. And my family was so warm and loving. Her family was not. They were not. They were cold, tough. And what's he going to school to become a radio announcer, for Christ's sake? Yeah, that was the typical. I'll tell you about that later. But
you can tell us about it now. What were you going to say?
No, because somebody might watch this. But anyway, so that's what happened. And I promised my folks, I promised them with all my heart, I would not get married till after I graduated. They were so concerned because a lot of GIs on a GI Bill would meet a girl, then that was the end. Like I was telling you, Jesse, that was the end. They'd never go back to school. And so that my friends, my mother and father heard about that, and it was pretty much open talk about it. And I said, no, I promise you, I will not get. And so that right then and there, I made up my mind. I'm going to 3 years. I'm making up the 4 and 3. So I went to summer school, night school.
Because
everything.
of love?
Huh?
Because you were in love with Judy? That's amazing. I love That's so romantic.
Oh yeah, no, we discussed that.
Wow.
So I'm going to make the 4 and 3.
Did you do that for me?
We knew we were going to get married. That was a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
I never proposed to her.
Really?
Never. I proposed. That's not in my language, you know. This boyfriend, girlfriend, dating. No.
Yeah.
We're in love. That was it, and it was marvelous. It was superb. It was great, and I kept my promise. I told you I had 29 hours one semester. My last semester, I did my practice teaching at Newton High School because I had majored in educational psych, and I took some social science classes primarily at both BU and Emerson. So
what did you imagine, like as a college kid?
I was going to teach.
You were just going to be a teacher.
Teach and coach. I wanted to coach.
Yeah.
There no such thing as coaching classes in those days, you know.
Yeah. Right.
But if you played sports, you know, I played baseball at Emerson.
Okay.
Anyway, that's the Emerson College part of my life. And sure enough, 2 days after I graduated at the Old South Church in Copley Square,
Oh,
we
wow.
got married 2 days later.
Oh, that really big brick church?
Right across from
Wow.
the library, the Old South Church.
Yeah.
And I was in New Jersey for an interview, a high school interview. I didn't get the job.
Well, but for future clarification, you didn't get married at the Old South Church.
Oh, no.
You graduated from the Old South Church. Where'd you get married?
Oh.
Syd, no.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Well, we got married 2 days later. We couldn't get married on a weekend.
Yeah.
It was that part of the Jewish calendar. We are not allowed to get married between this date and that date. So there was no way we could get married except on a weekday, not on a Sabbath and a holiday or nothing like that. And so we got married 2 days later. Well, we had it all set up.
Where'd you get married?
At the Chateau Garrod. It was run by the Goroditsky family, so they made it Chateau Garrod. It was on Beacon Street, about 3 doors down from where Judy lived.
In
And
Brooklyn?
they were caterers, and they had a beautiful place there. It was a lovely place.
Wow.
I
Anyway.
forgot we were Jewish for a second, and I thought you got married at the South Church.
Yeah. Hey, you know, he's still in the training period now.
No, I knew, but she was the one that was like, she got married at the church. That's not.
Say, are they picking this up on okay, Jess?
Oh, yeah.
No, they're picking it up good.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we're moving right along, and
Do you want to take a break at all, or take some water?
no,
No?
we're moving
Okay.
along, and then I have another hour and a
Okay, 'cause
half.
we can always stop it if you want a break.
Well, no, let
Well,
it go
I need
for
to
now.
pee. I need
We're
a
okay.
break.
We're
I
all
need a
set.
break. I need a break.
How do I stop it? Just stop?
You want a break?
I just need to pee, and I want to listen.
Jesse, do I just press stop?
I think you did it.
All set. I've been ready for days.
Let's go.
Now, yeah, we're married June 12th, 1951. It was on a Tuesday night at a lovely wedding. And the famous jazz king, George, the heck was his name now? Not important, was at the wedding and he played piano. The guy who sponsored the Newport Jazz Festival and all that. Friend of Sam Brooker, Judy's brother. And anyway, I'll think of it.
George Wayne?
Huh?
George-
Right, George Wein.
George
Right,
Wein,
that's
yeah.
it, George Wein. He played at our wedding. And now to get a job. I had my $75 from my last GI Bill monthly payment. And I went to the wedding with all the plans made to drive to Florida. Everybody did that in those days. You got in a car, you drove to Florida.
For your
That was the
honeymoon?
honeymoon, that was it. And hotels down in Florida then, in 1951, $6, $8 a night. Beautiful place, right on the beach. We stayed at a place that my folks had stayed at, the Belmar Hotel, I remember that. But I went to my wedding with nothing but the $75 I had from my GI Bill. And I was counting on a lot of envelopes.
Oh.
And I got a ton of envelopes, both families. I mean, you couldn't even hold them in a pocket. So I gave them all to my dad, and he was going to put them in an account for me. Okay? In the meantime, he gave me cash for the envelope. He would take out the cash from those envelopes he needed. So I had, you didn't have credit cards. There's no credit cards then. What a pleasure, you know.
Yeah.
So I had a pocket full of cash for, paying for the hotel and all that kind of stuff. And, excuse me, and we drove to Florida. And we stayed the first night in Boston, some hotel on Beacon Street, Shelton Hotel or whatever it was. And next morning, off we go. And heading for Florida. We had a wonderful drive down here. It was fun in those days to drive. No freeways, no interstates or anything else. Had to take a ferry from Delaware to Virginia. And we had a wonderful time in Florida. Stayed at this hotel right smack on the beach. And it was just a great getaway, I still have pictures from that. But now, got to get a job.